Sarah de Lagarde. Welcome back to the new episode on the ampersand factor. And today I'm joined by Laura Foll, who's a portfolio manager on the Global Equity Income team. Welcome, Laura. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks very much for having me.
So I seem to know that you have been with Janus Henderson for quite some time. You joined on the graduate scheme.
Yep. A shocking amount of time ago, about 17 years, which just doesn't feel real, but is correct. Yeah.
And what's the one thing about being a portfolio manager that genuinely lights you up? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Because you've been for that amount of time in the industry.
So the part of the job I love the absolute most, there's lots of bits about it that I enjoy, but the best thing to me is meeting company management teams. And from day one, I sort of turned up at this job as a 21-year-old, and you get to meet the chief exec of these incredibly large, complex companies. And you think, why do I get to sit here as some 21-year-old knowing at that point, next to nothing? And these incredibly successful people have to speak to me and listen to me. I just found that absolutely incredible. And I still find it today. I just think it's an absolute privilege to get to speak to these people that have built up, in some cases, small companies all the way to big, successful, large companies. These are incredible people that you get to sit opposite. And that's not to say that you fall in love with companies. Obviously, you remain dispassionate. But I just think it's a huge privilege to meet these people time and time again and sort of watch those companies grow over the years.
But speaking about the amount of time that you've been with Janus Henderson, 17 years seems like a very long time, but you're not the only one. I keep talking to colleagues in the investment team, and the longevity is really, the tenure is quite long.
For a long time on the team, so I've worked on the same team basically for 17 years, and for probably the first 10 years of that, I was referred to as the new person on the team because the guys around me on the team have worked there, in some cases, for over 30 years. So there's this incredible tenure. And I think what it comes down to, and again, it was one of the first things I noticed, that there's almost no ego. You can speak to pretty much anyone across the floor. And, when I started, I was a graduate, and they would very happily sit and talk to me about whatever asset class they were doing, whether it was Japanese equities or multi-asset. And they would sit and take time to talk to me, knowing that I knew nothing. And I think that's still the case today. I think there's very much a culture of these people, everyone is really passionate about whatever segment they're in. And if someone comes over and expresses interest in that, they're very happy to chat to you. And it's, if someone wants to talk to me about UK equities, it's great that someone's showing interest in it, and I'm very happy to chat to them. So that culture, even though it has been a long time, there's been, lots of changes in the industry and in the organisation over that time, but that culture has very much remained constant.
Yeah, I agree. Now, thinking about your job, being a portfolio manager, in my mind, is quite a tough job to have. You have to be analytical, you have to have the knowledge of the markets. But the main thing that would scare me is, what do you do in market volatility, great uncertainty? There must be quite a lot of pressure. At the end of the day, you're managing our clients' savings. So how do you cope with that?
Yeah, and you're right. It's a huge responsibility, and it really takes time to feel comfortable with that. And what I find helpful on those difficult days, and there are definitely difficult days, is being around other people. So with Brexit, I famously thought that Brexit would go one way, and it didn't. And I was on the flight back from my honeymoon when the decision was announced, and thought that I'd be spending a nice relaxing day, getting over jet lag, etc. Saw the announcement, came straight to the office, and I thought that I'd see a degree of panic and sort of chaos because the market wasn't expecting that outcome to Brexit, and we weren't either. And what I found when I got in was that there was definitely not that. There was complete calm. And there had been a meeting which I had missed of going through the impact of valuation on various portfolios and thinking through at the stock level. So by the time I got there, the focus had become, right, how are we going to keep the clients informed? James, who I work with, is always brilliant when there are those more sort of tumultuous times. His first thought is always, how can we keep the clients informed? Don't look inwards, look outwards. It's most important when times are difficult to keep communicating. And he's totally right. And I've hopefully learned that lesson. So I find being around others hugely helpful. The time that we kind of couldn't do that was COVID, because we weren't really allowed to be together. So what I found really helpful then is that James and I, who I work with very closely, would be on the phone to each other all the time. And that, I just remember walking around my garden in loops, talking to James sort of hours on end, because that was something that, even James, who'd been in the industry for 30 years, none of us had ever seen that before. But I just find if there's that other person that you can talk to, or a wider team, it helps hugely to sort of talk things out and take some of the emotion out of the decisions on those more difficult days.
Yeah. I mean, collaboration is definitely one of the values that we push at Janus Henderson. Together we win. That's one of the values. But there is another value that we talk about often, that's diversity improves results. How does that manifest to you?
Yeah, I think it's a very fine line that we have to tread when we're working as a team between, you have to be able to challenge each other and you have to have that debate. That's the whole point of having the team. You have to have that difference of thought, but you have to do it in a way that respects each other's opinion, respects each other's experience and expertise in different things. So yes, you have the debate and the challenge, but it's never for the sake of it. It's to try and bring something different, and ultimately the idea is to improve the investment outcome for the client always. So you are trying to have that debate, but you really have to tread a very fine line. And it's difficult sometimes. And sometimes, you end up on the wrong side of the line. But I think it's something we do very well on the team, because, there's a lot of us with very different tenures and backgrounds and experiences. And I think the most important thing is we all respect each other and where we're coming from.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Well, thank you very much for your insights today, Laura.